Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hope you guys are well. A quick preview and prediction for Josh Taylor versus Regis Prograis. This fight obviously goes down on the 26th of October. It is the final of the World Boxing Super Series Super Lightweight Tournament, and on top of that, it is a unification fight. Of course, Josh Taylor is the IBF Super Lightweight Champion, and Regis Prograis is the WBA Super Lightweight Champion, and both men are undefeated and in their primes. This fight, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the standout fights of the year, and, gauging other fans' opinions on this fight, there are very few people who are certain who wins this fight. I've seen very few people predict a winner confidently, and that in itself just goes to show how good this fight is, how evenly matched this fight is, and for me, it's up in the air. Anybody can win this fight, and I wanted to stress that before we go into the breakdown. So yeah, I really am looking forward to this fight. And by the way, if you haven't seen it, check out the Sky Sports The Gloves Are Off episode with these two fighters. Really good episode. Both guys seem very confident. Neither guy is trash talking, but you can tell both guys have tremendous self-belief going into this fight. I cannot wait. Let's briefly go through the tale of the tape. Josh Taylor, he is 15-0 with 12 knockouts. Regis Prograis is 24-0 with 20 knockouts. So Regis Prograis has actually had more fights, but does that mean he's more experienced as a pro? No, it doesn't. The main thing for me is level of competition, and to date, Josh Taylor has actually fought, in my opinion at least, a higher level of competition. He's fought Ivan Baranchik, an unbeaten champion, super strong, he can punch. Very good win. He also fought Victor Postal, a former world champion. The likes of Miguel Vasquez and even O'Hara Davis. Point being, I think Josh Taylor has had more competitive fights on the way up in comparison to Regis Prograis. That's not to say Prograis hasn't fought some decent guys. Kirill Relik has always been a tough ask for any fighter, but Prograis, destroyed him basically. So that was a good win. But other than that, it's kind of few and far in between. You would say Terry Flanagan and Julius Ndongo are his other best wins. So I would certainly say Josh Taylor, despite having fought less fights and despite being younger, I would say he's fought better competition and arguably is the more experienced pro. Not only that, he actually had a better amateur background in comparison to Regis Prograis, of course, Josh Taylor, a former Olympian. So yeah, Prograis is 2 years older, he's had more fights, but I don't think he's more experienced. Let's go on to the height and reach and whatnot. Josh Taylor, quite a tall, super lightweight. He is 5'10" with a 69.5-inch reach, whereas Regis Prograis is listed as 5'8" with a 67-inch reach. So Josh Taylor, the taller, longer man, he's got a 2-inch height advantage and also a 1.5-inch reach advantage. So no doubt about it, Taylor is the bigger fighter here. Not only in terms of height and reach, but Taylor is just a big super lightweight in general. So Taylor, the taller, longer guy and bigger guy in general. Will that play a factor in this fight? Potentially, given what Josh Taylor's style is, I think the size advantage could play a factor, but like I say, we'll get into that in a little bit. Also, for the record, both of these guys are southpaws, and just also to mention the power, both guys have high knockout percentages. So Prograis has a knockout ratio of 83% and Josh Taylor has a knockout ratio of 80%. Both guys can certainly hit, but if you are asking me who hits harder, I would hazard a guess and say Regis Prograis. To me, his shots look a lot more snappy. They are more kind of... sometimes he delivers his shots, particularly the straight punches, with better technique. And he just seems more explosive in comparison to Josh Taylor. He's also quicker with his punches. And when he lands, his punches just seem to have a bit more of an effect in comparison to Josh Taylor. Taylor gets most of his knockouts by wearing his opponents down, working that body. So in terms of one punch stopping power, I would say Prograis hits harder. But onto the style matchup. To me, this fight, like I said, it's extremely hard to call. Josh Taylor being the bigger, taller, longer guy, and maybe stronger guy, he needs to make that count. I do believe Josh Taylor's strength is real, and on top of that size advantage, that could play into his hands. And, he needs to utilise that. Josh Taylor, for me, I think he needs to kind of get on Prograis' chest. I believe he needs to try and, push Prograis back to try and nullify some of that power. Try to crowd him, maybe get low, get under his punches and work that body. Similar to how he did against Ohara Davis. And he needs to make it a rough, tough fight. I think he needs to get close, crowd him, and, do what he does and work that body. Josh Taylor is very good at mid-range and he's solid on the inside. And I think that's where he needs to fight this fight, mainly on the inside, to be honest with you. I think at mid-range, there's a big element of danger here for Josh Taylor. So for me, Taylor, either get on the inside and really try to, get up in Prograis' grill and work that body, or maybe alternatively, try to make the most of that height and reach. Josh Taylor doesn't usually do that for a full fight. He usually mixes it up. Sometimes he'll box from his jab and try to keep you at arm's length. Other times he'll try and walk you down, get on the inside, and work that body. We saw that against Postal, where he kind of demonstrated both sides of his game. Sometimes he boxed from the outside. Other times he really took the fight to Victor Postal and got on his chest and started to work that body, and he would try and force Postal back. So Josh Taylor is fairly versatile in his approach. He kind of does different things in a fight. Sometimes it'll be mid-range, sometimes it'll be up close, sometimes it will be from the distance. But the key here for me is utilising the physical advantages. Maybe start the fight keeping it long, see how that works out, and then go from there. If you need to make any adjustments, carry them out as such. But I would certainly suggest Taylor starts this fight boxing from range. If you go back and watch the Terry Flanagan fight, Prograis won that fight clearly, don't get me wrong. But, Terry Flanagan was kind of, I wouldn't say fighting negatively, but he was trying to keep Prograis at arm's length. And he kind of made Prograis look a little ordinary when he made Prograis chase the fight. Don't get me wrong, Prograis was winning the rounds, but, maybe that showed something in Prograis' game where if you make him chase a fight, he's not quite as effective. And maybe Taylor should try to capitalise on that. In comparison to Terry Flanagan, Taylor's a bigger dude. He's got a better jab. He hits harder. So if Taylor kind of replicates that kind of style or that game plan, I do believe he will have success doing that, and it will give Prograis some problems. Whether Prograis can adjust to that is the million-dollar question. The issue I have with this, though, is if Josh Taylor can actually remain disciplined enough to carry out that type of display for 12 rounds. Because I personally believe Josh Taylor is the type of fighter where he could be boxing, having success, having it his own way. Then he gets caught with a good shot. Once that happens, red mist descends and Josh Taylor will look for a tear-up. We saw that against Ohara Davis. I mean, Taylor was styling on Ohara Davis at times, and he was in control of certain rounds. Then all of a sudden, Ohara Davis would catch him with a shot, and Taylor would really start to open up and try and get him back. That's not really a wise game plan, or a wise trait to have against a dangerous guy like Regis Prograis. So can Josh Taylor box like that for 12 rounds? I'm really not sure. I think the red mist does descend a little too often, and he's got a massive ego. And sometimes that's a good thing for a fighter, but sometimes that is to the fighter's detriment. And Josh Taylor, to me, could be one of those fighters where it's his undoing, the ego. And like I said, against a Prograis type, that could be a recipe for disaster, because I'll tell you what, when Josh Taylor opens up, you'll notice a lot of his shots are wide. When he's really going for it, when he's opening up, he's kind of a wide puncher. He'll throw hooks to the body, hooks to the head, and he sometimes stands a bit square on. for me, in those moments, that is when Prograis' speed, power and timing could come into play. Prograis, to me, lands... He's got quicker hands for a start, but I actually believe he's got the better straight punches. And in the scenarios where Taylor's opening up, if Prograis can punch with Taylor, I think Taylor could be in a lot of trouble. I really do. Because, as I say, Prograis is fairly pinpoint, he's accurate, he hits hard, and his straight punches are quite good. And in those moments, I believe Josh Taylor will be in trouble if he's opening up. I don't think Taylor should punch with Prograis because I think Taylor comes off second best. I really do. And that's my issue with this fight. I believe if Taylor utilises his physical advantages, I would pick him to win. I just don't have the confidence that he will do that. I really don't. And Prograis is a cerebral type of fighter. In those moments, he will take advantage of that. You know, he will. So that is my bugbear with this fight. Not bugbear, that's a bad phrase, but that's my problem with picking Taylor in this fight. I believe he does make mistakes, and his discipline sometimes is in question. And what I mean by that, I don't mean his discipline as in he's not a professional, he doesn't take boxing seriously. I don't mean it like that. I mean his discipline in regards to following a game plan. That's what I'm trying to say. His mental maturity in the ring, his ring IQ, you know, the ability to stay calm in those scenarios, I think is under question. And like I said, against a guy like Regis Prograis, to me, that could be his undoing. And that's one thing Prograis does well, He does actually maintain composure very well. He stays cool under fire, and he's a bit of an iceman. He's very cerebral, and against a guy like Taylor, that obviously plays to his hands. That plays in his advantage, and certainly something to consider going into this fight. One more thing that I think is worth mentioning is if Regis Prograis can draw Josh Taylor's lead. You know, Regis Prograis is a guy who, in my opinion, sets more traps than Josh Taylor. You'll see Prograis feint with his head, feint with his hands, feint with his shoulders, feint with his waist, feint with his feet. Regis Prograis is always setting traps. And if he can draw Josh Taylor's lead and bait him with those feints, then I believe he also has the ability to, you know, counterpunch Josh Taylor, to be quite honest. I really do. And when I say draw someone's lead, I don't mean like make Josh Taylor be the aggressor. I'm not saying that necessarily, because I think if Josh Taylor is the aggressor, he can have success doing that. But it's if Josh Taylor kind of, you know, follows Prograis around in straight lines while not closing the distance, and then he's biting on those feints. If Taylor bites on those feints from Prograis, you could see Prograis light this dude up like a Christmas tree, you know, as far as I'm concerned. So I can see how both guys win this fight. To me, physically, Taylor has the advantages. From a mental perspective, I believe Prograis had the advantage. Technically, I think both guys are in a similar ballpark in terms of their ability and talent. But you guys want me to pick a winner, right? And that's the main thing. You know, we don't want to sit on the fence. We've got to pick a winner. And again, similar to the fight last week with Beterbiev Vodcik, I can see how both guys win this fight. But sometimes you have to really, you know, rely on your gut feeling. Sometimes your gut feeling is right. In fact, there's been so many times I've made predictions where I haven't gone with my gut feeling and I've got the fight wrong. Last weekend was a fight where I got it right based on gut feeling. So we're going to go with that method again. You know, when you break this fight down, it's hard to split. But gut instinct, I think it's a bad night for Josh Taylor. I wouldn't be shocked if Regis Prograis gets the job done. And if Prograis is to win this fight, I believe he needs to knock Josh Taylor out. And that's what I'm picking. We're going with Regis Prograis by stoppage. I'm not sure when exactly. I would say in the second half of the fight, when both guys are a bit more ragged, when both guys are starting to get tired, I'd say that's when the knockout will occur, in the second half of the fight. But yeah, we are going with Regis Prograis by stoppage. When I first saw Regis Prograis, I got the impression that this dude had the potential to be a special fighter. And I'm going with my gut feeling, I'm going with my gut instinct, and we're going with Regis Prograis by knockout, second half of the fight. Share your thoughts below. I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts on this bout. Me personally, I'm just looking forward to the fight. You know, I've got no dog in this race. I really do appreciate both fighters. I like watching both of these guys fight. I've got a lot of time for both fighters. They are a breath of fresh air. So I've got no dog in this race. I just want to see a good fight. But I am picking Regis Prograis to win this fight by stoppage. And one further thing to add. Whoever loses this fight isn't any worse for it. You know, this is just a fight between two elite level fighters in their division. You know, I'm kind of sick of people, you know, downplaying fighters when they lose a fight like this. When it's a 50-50 fight, someone's going to lose, man. Doesn't mean they're a bad fighter. Doesn't mean they've been exposed. It just happens when the best fights the best. Somebody's got to lose. And the loser, you know, he's no worse off for this. Unless he gets blasted out in a round, of course. Listen, man, he's no worse for this. So let's just look forward to a great fight. May the best man win. But we've got Regis Prograis by stoppage. Share your thoughts below. Peace.